All right, let's dive into a really fascinating philosophical duel. It's between a teacher, Martin Heidegger, and his most loyal student, Hans-Georg Gadamer. Now, based on the great research of Haley Irene Burke, we're going to explore how these two thinkers wrestled with one single but incredibly deep question. How can we actually understand the world without, destroying the very thing we're trying to grasp?
And this is the question at the heart of it all. I mean, think about it for a second. The moment you try to analyze a feeling, a memory, a beautiful sunset, don't you kind of risk losing what made it special in the first place? How do you study life without pinning it down like a butterfly in a display case? This problem right here is what set the stage for a huge breakthrough in philosophy.
So, to see how they tackled this, here's our game plan. We're going to move through 5 parts. We'll start with the dilemma itself, then look at Heidegger's pretty radical solution. After that, we'll see where it fell short, and then explore how his student, Gadamer, came up with this brilliant fix that totally redefines what it means to understand, well, anything. Okay, so first up, let's dig into that initial problem, what we're calling the analyst's dilemma. Now, this challenge was really inherited from another philosopher, Edmund Husserl. He wanted to create this super rigorous science of consciousness, but his method had a pretty serious catch. See, Husserl's whole approach involved stepping back from an experience to analyze it. But when you do that, it's like taking a fish, your living, breathing experience, out of the flowing water of life. Suddenly, it's not alive anymore, right? It just becomes a dead object for you to study. You lose the very movement and vitality you wanted to understand in the first place. And the philosopher Paul Nadarp just nailed this criticism. He basically asked, wouldn't you have to artificially stop the continuous stream of life? You'd have to sterilize it just like a scientist does with a lab specimen. The very act of looking at it seemed to kill it. And this is the exact problem that a young Martin Heidegger set out to solve. Which brings us right to section 2. So enter Martin Heidegger, Husserl's brilliant student. He completely got Nadarp's point and came up with a revolutionary new method. But as we're about to see, it was a very personal, almost isolated solo journey. So Heidegger's big idea was something he called formal indication. The idea is this. Instead of slapping a rigid, pre-made definition onto an experience, you use these vague, almost empty concepts as signposts. The goal isn't to tell you what something is. It's to point you in a general direction so you can discover its meaning for yourself, from your own life. So how does this thing actually work? Well, he called it a process of enactment. And it's basically 3 steps. First, you start with a formal concept, like his famous one, being in the world. Next, you have to actively destruct or strip away all the public, secondhand ideas you have about it. And then finally, you fill in that empty concept using the raw material of your own unique existence. And that's the absolute core of his method. As the scholar S.J. McGrath puts it, it's an invitation to live the idea for yourself. It's not about memorizing a definition from a book. It's about forging an understanding that is fundamentally yours, rooted in your own one-of-a-kind place in the world. Honestly, the best way to think about this is like a philosophical Mad Libs. Seriously. Heidegger gives you the sentence with a blank, like, being in the world is like blank. And you, and only you, can fill in that blank with an authentic word from your own life. The goal here is a personal truth, not a universal one. But, and this is a big but, this whole solo journey thing had a massive blind spot. And that brings us to our 3rd section, the missing social piece. Heidegger's method was powerful, for sure, but it was also fundamentally individualistic, maybe even lonely. So people started pointing out some pretty big problems. Because it's a solo journey, it got accused of solipsism. The idea that only your own mind is real. It really downplays the importance of other people and our social lives. And, this is crucial, it treats everyday language not as a tool for connection, but as this corrupting obstacle you have to get over to find your true, authentic self. And this quote from John Hogland gets right to the heart of why Heidegger was so focused on the individual. For him, the social world, with its common sense and everyday chatter, was actually a threat. He thought it was relentlessly homogenizing, basically absorbing real experience and taming it into something bland and generic. So to find truth, you had to get away from the crowd. And this is where the story takes a really cool turn. This brings us to Gadamer's fix. Heidegger's student, Hans-Georg Gadamer, saw all the power in his teacher's project, but he also saw its deep flaw. So he became a kind of bridge builder, connecting that deep search for understanding back to the world of other people. This chart lays out the shift perfectly. So Gadamer basically takes Heidegger's playbook and makes some huge changes. Instead of the solo method of formal indication, he proposes conversation. He swaps the process of tearing things down, destruction, for building things up through dialogue. The focus moves from just the self to the self plus an other, like another person or a text. And because of all that, the goal itself changes, from a purely personal, authentic self-understanding to a shared understanding. It's a total pivot. So here's the game-changing shift. For Gadamer, that spark of real understanding doesn't come from a deep, lonely dive into yourself. No, it happens when you encounter something outside of you, a piece of art, a book, another person that just stops you in your tracks. It's an experience that challenges what you thought you knew, an experience that pulls you up short.
And this brings us to the payoff in our final section. For Gadamer, understanding isn't a solo act. It is fundamentally a dialogue. It's not something you achieve alone in a cabin in the woods. It's something you build with others out in the world.
This is probably Gadamer's most famous statement, and it's a direct challenge to his teacher. Remember how Heidegger saw common language as a problem? Well, Gadamer saw it as the very place where understanding lives. He's saying that the world only becomes meaningful to us through language. It's not some barrier to reality. It's our only way in. And this just captures the magic of a real conversation for Gadamer. It's not about one person winning an argument or proving they're right. It's about entering a shared space, a communion, where both people are genuinely open to being changed by the encounter. You're transformed together. You don't walk away the same person you were. So, to wrap up Gadamer's really powerful vision, real understanding gets sparked by something outside of ourselves. It happens inside our shared language. The goal isn't to win, but to build a common ground, a shared horizon of meaning. And by doing this, Gadamer brings philosophy out of the isolated self and puts it right back into the messy, complicated, beautiful shared world that we all actually live in. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. Is the path to real insight a kind of solo journey deep into your own self, like Heidegger believed? Or is it found in the creative, transformative power of a shared conversation with the people, the art, and the history that make up our world?